Oh, for the past few days, I felt compelled to say something about our whole global situation that's been going on. And I keep going over and over in my head about what I want to say. And I can't come to any conclusions. So I figured I'd just try to wing it, really. Because, I don't know, that's when I force myself for the honesty to come out. So it's a really interesting situation. There's two ways this could go. There's two ways to look at it. I said that to a friend the other day. I had a friend text me in the morning about 3 or 4 days ago saying that he was scared of this situation and what could come of it. And I understand where he's coming from. Like, who knows how this could evolve? And my response basically was that we are in charge of how we think about it. That's the only thing we can really do. Like, we can take all the precautions necessary, but what matters most is how we view this situation. If we are in panic and in fear and let those types of emotions overwhelm us, then we only make the situation worse. And I fully like recognize and appreciate how that could be even worse for some people to hear. Like, if you're in a situation where you're in fear and then someone tells you that your fear is only going to make it worse and you feel as if you can't control your fear, then that's can be a very scary thing. Like, it's only going to make you feel more and more fear and more unease. So I guess with knowing that, I want to share what I know that helps me deal with my fear because I've felt it too. Now, to be completely honest, a couple days ago when I had a moment of fear myself, it wasn't even connected to this whole situation. Honestly, from the beginning of this, I have felt nothing but faith and assurance that everything was going to work out fine. So how do I deal with fear? How do I deal with unease? How do I deal with worry? I wrote a script for a video a while back and I recorded it the other day, but I haven't released it yet because I want to do it again because I just didn't feel like I was feeling it when I was doing it. But essentially, there was one part where I went over about how I deal with fear and how I deal with unease and worry and all those emotions when they do arise. And for me, it boils down to faith. That's the word that keeps coming to me. It's just the understanding of what we truly are that really allows me to transcend all these feelings. And what we are is eternal beings. I am not simply Mike. I am an eternal being moving through Mike, using Mike as a vessel, so to speak, to share what I know and experience what it is to be a human being and evolve spiritually, physically, mentally, psychologically, all those things. That's why I feel as if I'm here, or why any of us are here. And I feel as if we're all moving back to that level of union with the absolute, with the Atman, with the all. Now, whether or not you believe this or you have any kind of spiritual faith or anything like that, it it's not necessary to understand that fear can be damaging. Like, there's plenty of scientific literature to support the idea that fear elicits certain hormonal responses in ourselves that can be damaging. Like, obviously, you're probably all familiar with the concept that stress kills, and there's a reason for that. We are not supposed to be remaining in that state of fight or flight all the time. That state of fight or flight is put in place to serve us in the sense that it's to say, here's something threatening to your well-being. Now here's a load of energy for you to respond with. So when it comes from obviously when we were lower life forms living in the wild and we encountered something that could potentially take our life, we are the progeny of the life forms that paid attention to that fear response. Now, there were life forms that didn't, like, that's the process of evolution. Some life forms, when encountering a dangerous animal in the wild, had that fear response and was given what was referred to as the fight or flight. They would react to their energy. All their energy would be given to their extremities so they could run or they could fight. So at one point, this fear response was necessary. And it still is in a sense, but the way we interpret fear and the way we feel fear and process fear nowadays is not productive for us. It isn't what keeps us going. If anything, it's damaging to us. We, at one point, respected our fear in the sense that when we had that internal visceral response, when the blood flow was taken away from the organs and given to the extremities for us to either run or fight, we did exactly that. But nowadays we live in a society where we are bombarded with things that scare us. We are constantly, every single person on the earth essentially is constantly filled with the anxiety of, will I have enough? Will I last? What do I need to do in order to remain as long as possible and be as healthy as possible? And how do I take care of my family? How do I look out for my loved ones? These are things that we all experience all the time. And to be in that constant state of anxiety without processing that energy in a productive way, in a healthy way, it is damaging to our internal organs. So that whole concept of fear being unhealthy is what could turn this situation into something far worse than what it is. Now, to get a little bit esoteric about it, the truth of the matter, whether you believe it or not, is that we are vibrational beings. Everything that we are is a vibration in a field. Every atom, every quark, every proton, neutron, electron, all things are just vibrations in fields of infinite space. And the whole idea of solidity or matter is merely an illusion. And when we harness our internal energy and we decide in which ways we want to use it, we can literally change our own matter and the matter that surrounds us and the reality that we inhabit. We all have a responsibility as parts of the collective consciousness to practice a state of calm, practice a state of peace, and practice a state of compassion and kindness. Because if we continue to believe in our separateness, if we continue to believe that we have no control, then that will be the case. We will be victims of our reality rather than creators of our reality. There's always momentum. There's always this energy that is creating ourselves and the world around us at all times. But if we don't understand that, if we don't understand that we are a part of it, not separate from it, then we will simply become a victim of it. All the collective momentum, the inertia of that energy that has led us up to this point will continue to drive us in a self-destructive direction over this time. So we need to understand that so we can overcome that momentum and that inertia. So when I came home from the grocery store the other day, I was feeling fear. And like I said, it wasn't due to this whole fiasco. It was actually something personally in my life, but it elicited that fear. And I think it was so easy for me to fall into it because of my surroundings. So I ended up reciting a mantra to myself when I was lying on my bed, trying to basically regain control of my mind. It was, I am calm, present, loving and kind, and I am protected at all times. I find it helps for me to rhyme things. It makes them stick in my head better. So when I was thinking that, it really helped me a lot. It alleviated a lot of what I was feeling. Because I know at my core that there's nothing to worry about. Now, I know how controversial or contentious that very statement could be, because I understand that there's a lot of different perspectives in the world, and you could easily say that there's a lot to worry about. But worry doesn't serve us. Being proactive, being cautious serves us. Worry does not. Fear does not. Understanding the difference between the two is what will serve us in the end, what will get us out of this mess. And I don't even, just I don't even want to call it a mess. I don't want, because to me it's a value judgment to say it's a mess. And at my core, I judge nothing. I don't see anything as inherently good or bad. I think a lot of good could actually come from this. I think that a lot of good has already come from this. Like, just to give you an example, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that in China, people can now see the sky again. They can see the blue sky for the first time in years, if not decades. And there's so much that could change for the better because of this. And the way I see it, I think that's up to us. We have to demand the appropriate change, because this could go really badly for us, or it could go really positively for us. It depends on how we react to it. We are in control here. That's what we have to understand, that the control is still in our hands. We don't let the fear take over you, because then you will relinquish control to those who are in power. And to those who are in power, they want to maintain the status quo, or at least they want to alter the status quo in a way that benefits them even more. Now, honestly, thousands of people dying may be what they want. I'm not saying either way, but the fact that that could be a possibility is something we have to consider. In this situation, honestly, I don't feel any fear towards it. I have an entirely different attitude towards things like this than I might have had years ago. Like, years ago, we never encountered anything at this level, so can't really speak to how I would have handled it, but I know it wouldn't have been well. But now, like, I just don't feel I don't think it's going to be bad. And so let me explain that. Like, I don't think it's going to be bad because I don't consider anything to be bad. Every sentence I say, I consider how it could be received, and that makes me think, how can I explain myself? And to be able to explain all of it here right now is not my objective. My objective is to help shift the consciousness of everybody out there, because that is what is needed, a shift in consciousness. Yes, we need to take precautions. Yes, we need to wash our hands. Yes, we require some social distancing. Yes, we need to sanitize more and all those things. But we also need to shift our consciousness towards everything, towards how we see everything. And in order to do that, we need to understand what we are. It always comes back to that. Everything comes back to understanding what we are. We are not bystanders. We are not just along for the ride and whatever happens, happens, and we have no control. The way we think, the way we feel determines what happens. Immediately after I say something like that, I understand there's going to be a lot of people that simply do not believe it and dismiss this entirely because they don't understand or they don't agree with that sentiment. So then my mind immediately wants to go to, well, listen to me and I'll explain it to you, because it makes sense when you really boil it down. But if anybody truly doesn't understand it or doesn't believe it, but they are interested and they would like to hear a different perspective that might change the way they think about it or might help them understand it better, please reach out to me, because that is what I try to do. I want to tell everyone the truth about who we are, because it changes everything we are when we understand it. So what should I say to the people that don't understand it? What should I say to the people that don't agree with it, that don't have a spiritual or belief or a religious belief? What do I say to those people that have no belief in the power of the mind to change the reality that they're in, that they inhabit? They think that they are just a happenstance. They think that they are just something that is occurring because we are a conglomerate of atoms that are just randomly thrown together and they react in the way that they react because it's just chemical reactions. Well, that's true. That's true on some level. It really is. But as I've said before, everything is paradoxical. Everything is a dichotomy. There is two sides of this coin. Yes, we are just a random conglomerate of atoms that are interacting with one another to create a certain outcome. But those atoms are governed by a force that is beyond the material. And it is in the wave, it is in the frequency, it is in the vibration. That is at the core of all the material. What every bit of matter is essentially is a vibration or an excitation of energy in an infinite field. So, given that knowledge, you can alter the way you think. You can alter the way you feel by practice. And when you alter the way you think and the way you feel, you are literally changing the frequency of vibration in your mind, in your body, in your soul, in your spirit, within the reality and the universe itself. And it has no real limitations. There's no bounds to how far it can go and to how much it can actually influence. In this moment, I find I can only speak from personal experience to explain what I mean. And I can tell you that when I am in a more harmonious way of thinking, where everything makes sense together. What I mean is that when I was younger and I wasn't in this way of thinking, I had conflicting thoughts. I had dissonance, cognitive dissonance constantly occurring in my mind. I would have one thought that believes one thing and another thought that believes another. And I had this constant back and forth, this bickering, this arguing, this critiquing, this debate going on within me. Like, so if this makes sense, then how does this make sense? Nothing ever made complete sense. There was always a question. There was always a wondering. There was always a conflict. There was always a disagreement in my own mind. But when I started to understand that we're all energy, which is fact, there's no debating that. Matter and energy are interchangeable. Matter is just a vibration of energy. So it's not as if matter vibrates to a certain frequency and then it becomes solid and it's a still stagnant thing. It is still moving. Everything that there is still moving. Even a rock that seems hard and solid and stationary is still just the vibration of atoms. If you zoom in, you will see electrons orbiting an atom at unbelievable speeds, and due to that orbit, it is constantly shaking the atom. I learned that from watching videos of Richard Feynman. He would talk about how atoms are just jiggling little things, all jiggling together and banging together. There's no solidity in reality. Everything is just movement of energy and exchange of energy. So when I understood that fundamental principle, it made me see everything as the same. And when I seen everything as the same, I seen everything as having the same value. And by seeing everything that had the same value, it changed the way I thought about myself, and it changed the way I thought about the world around me. So I could no longer believe that I was less than anyone else or that I was superior to anyone else, because in fact, it was not true. It was my perception of it. I understood that I didn't like myself and I didn't like aspects about myself, and I thought that aspects about myself were better than other aspects of other people. But when it comes down to it, if I looked at the truth, which is what I wanted more than anything, the truth was that there was no real difference. And by understanding there was no real difference, I understood that I was nothing special. And I also understood that nobody else was anything special. Everything was all the same thing. So I started to see myself as part of the whole. And when I understood myself as part of the whole, I literally began to change the way I thought and felt. When I understood this way of thinking, there was no more dissonance in my mind. There was no more argument. It just made sense to me on every level. Every question I had was answered by this philosophy. And by it being answered, I no longer had the back and forth in my mind about what was right over here and what was right over here and what was wrong over here and what was wrong over here. There was no disagreement anymore. And when you embody that state where there's no disagreement within yourself, you come into a state of peace. You come into a state of equanimity, into a state of love, in true love, because the moments I had experienced love in my life, I knew very viscerally what it felt like. It was very real to me what it was to feel love. And like most, it was the most exhilarating feeling I had ever known. And then I had found that once I understood that I was part of the whole, this feeling of love was the only thing I knew after that. It was the only thing that really, truly was real to me. It seems that every time I try to explain anything, it always comes back to that fact that we are all love, we are all energy, we are all one thing. And that is what is necessary in this understanding, in this situation, just like any other situation. It's always got to come back to love and peace and togetherness and community and joy and every other positive thing you can possibly imagine. It's hard for people to believe. I understand that. But it's also not. Like, once you get it, it just happens. It's not like you have to spend 20 years studying the subject. It's not as if, you gotta, like something like calculus, you gotta study it for years in order to get it. Once you feel it once you know it to be the truth once, it's just there. It's just the only thing that is real. So to the people that don't believe in that, I don't know what to say to you to convince you right now, because it's not something that could just, I don't expect it to just click in your mind right away and it be real. But perhaps you could take, if you don't have the faith in yourself to see it, perhaps you could have the faith in me. I came from a state of being that was, I came from a state of mind that was torture in many ways. I lived many days, most of my days, with the thought in the back of my head that nothing will ever be okay. And the only time I didn't think that, the only time it wasn't present in my consciousness, was when I was distracting myself. And I feel as if that's what we all do on some level. We all been sold this idea. We've all bought into this lifestyle of go to work, go to school, come home, entertain yourself, distract yourself, give yourself pleasure, all those things to keep you from being with yourself. Most people would rather experience some sort of discomfort than actually spend time with their own thoughts. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I read a study, or I didn't read the study, but I read about a study years ago where people were given the option to either undergo an electrical shock or spend some time alone with their own thoughts. And most people would way rather undergo the electric shock. And I get it, because I was there. I used to be terrified of my own mind. I would never go deep into my own mind. I would never go even shallow into my own mind. I wouldn't ask questions. I went to work, I came home, I spent time with my friends. I watched TV, I ate food. I was constantly distracting myself from actually thinking, from actually wondering what is going on, why do I feel this way? And it is those kinds of things that we have to address. Everybody needs to go within. Everybody needs to ask these questions about themselves. Also, in these times, it helps to have things like affirmations. These are the kinds of things that get dismissed most frequently by people that have never used them, or if they've never worked for, if they don't understand, or they don't believe in that esoteric type of thinking. But affirmations, the purpose they serve is to reprogram your subconscious, because we are all operating by our subconscious. Our subconscious is basically making every decision we make. Now, you may believe that everything you decide is your conscious decision, but it is made even before you've understood you've made it. And this has also been shown, this has been studied and understood, that the decisions we make are often decided before we even thought about it. So to reprogram our subconscious is what is necessary to overcome our fear in these situations. So affirmations are a good help. So what happens is that we have these beliefs deep inside of us that say, we are separate, I am less, I am better, there is lack, I am scared, there's not enough to go around, If I don't work hard, if I don't struggle, then I won't prosper. Life is struggle. But if we work hard, we'll get occasional moments of pleasure and well being and happiness and joy. But it comes at a price. We must sacrifice our health. We must sacrifice our relationships. We must sacrifice our, I don't know, you name it. We've been sold this idea that happiness comes at a price, and that price is unhappiness. That we have to be unhappy sometimes in order to be happy. That in order to obtain happiness, we have to constantly struggle in order to do so. So these are the kinds of ideas that are embedded deep within our subconscious. So by taking on an affirmation and repeating it to oneself, you are literally changing the thoughts that are on repeat in your mind. Because a thought is nothing more, no, sorry, a belief is nothing more than a thought that is repeated. Once you believe it once, it repeats on a loop in your mind in the deep subconscious. You may not hear it all the time, but it's something you believe, so it's always there. But it's just a repetition of a thought that you once believed because you felt something emphatic about it. You felt something emotional because of it, so you believed it to be real. So by changing the way you think, you can change the way you feel by repetition. The thing is that there is the idea of coming up against what you know to be the truth. Now, what you think you may know to be truth may not be. So you might say to yourself, I'll give you an example. When I came home the other day and I was experiencing fear, I knew that I could take control of that. I knew I had to observe it. I had to look at myself and understand that I was in a state of fear. In order to overcome it, I had to understand how it began. And the way I did that was by repeating an affirmation to myself. I said, I am calm, I am present, I am loving, and I'm kind, and I am protected at all times. So I want to break that down. And why I chose those words, even though I don't believe it was a choice, they kind of just occurred to me, but they worked. I wanted to say I was calm because at that point I wasn't. I felt the tension inside me and I wasn't feeling good. So by telling myself I was calm, I was immediately confronted with the fact that I wasn't. And then I was able to address why it was that way. So it was like an inner dialogue. I said, I am calm. My inner self said, no, you're not. And I was like, okay, so why not? And I thought to myself, well, you're scared of something. And I won't get into the details, but it was basically surrounding the idea that I made a mistake at work and I was fearing that I would lose my job. And I had just gotten this job. So I was like, God damn, what? This again. So I asked myself, as I do in every situation where I'm fearful, is there anything I can do to remedy the situation right now? Have I done everything in my power to make this situation better? And at that point I had. All I had to do was call my supervisor and explain the situation. And I did so. I left a message, so I never really got any resolve. So I was still in a state of what's going to happen. I was still in the unknown, but the fact was there was nothing else I could do. I had to sit and be there and wait for a response. So I knew there was no logical, rational reason to feel worry or fear. It wasn't going to serve me. And the only time fear is ever useful is when it's urging you to do something or not do something. So when I first realized that I made the mistake and that my job could be at risk, I felt the fear. So I was urged to call my supervisor and explain the situation the best I could, which I did. So then I was still feeling the residual fear, the leftover vibration of unease. So I lied in my bed and I addressed that. I wondered, okay, is there anything I could do right now to let this go? Or was there anything I could do right now to make the situation better for myself? And the answer was no. I had done everything I could. So I had to let it go. The next part, I'm present. I said I was present. Now this one I didn't really think about. It just kind of came to me. And the point was to be here with myself now, because presence is a practice. It requires a practice. It requires a level of discipline, because there are a lot of things that I have available to me that distract me and that give me little rushes of dopamine or whatever other happy hormones I could get. Like for me, it's always been entertainment. Ever since I was a kid, I always distracted myself with TV. So I find myself a lot throughout the day, spend a lot of time on my phone or my computer just watching YouTube videos. Sometimes it's something educational and something that really interests my core self. Sometimes it's just humor, just comedies, just sitcoms and stuff like that, which I do get joy out of. But I'm not saying that they're a bad thing by any means, but there is a balance I need to practice. If I am distracting myself from my fear or my pain with these things, then it's not good. But if I'm perfectly at ease and perfectly at peace, and I just want to throw on a sitcom and have a few laughs or watch a video that might explain something about the universe to me, then that to me is perfectly acceptable. It's when I use these things as a distraction from what I'm feeling that it becomes damaging to myself. I started saying I was present because I wanted to be present. I wanted to be there in that moment, because I know that in this moment, in the moment that you're in, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, not thinking about anything that takes you away from what you are experiencing right now, that's where you feel the most connection to yourself and to everyone else and to the universe and to whatever. And that's when those happy hormones really flood your being. Now you might get little sparks of them, little jolts of happiness or dopamine or whatever when you like I said, when you watch TV or you eat food or you distract yourself with an entertaining conversation or whatever it is that takes you away from the present moment. You get little, my God, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Either way, you get these secretions of hormones when you do these things. But if you're doing them to distract yourself from what you're truly feeling, then they won't be anywhere near as enjoyable and as loving and as accepting and understanding and all those great feelings that we get as when you're in the present moment and accepting of who you are. When you're not wanting to change, when you're not needing anything to make you feel good, when you know that everything you need and everything you could ever want is here right now. That feeling is beyond anything I've felt ever in my life. All those feelings I had from all the pleasures of the body, pleasures of the material, pleasures of all those earthly pleasures don't even hold a candle to the spiritual pleasures, to the union of being with all. So I challenged myself to stay present, and I did that by saying I am present. Because when I say it, a part of me does believe it, but then it basically sends a wave through my consciousness that searches for that part that doesn't believe it. And then I shine the light on that part. I'm like, why don't I want to be present right now? And I see it. I'm like, what's keeping me from being in the present right now? And then I realized in that moment where I was trying to alleviate my fear, that I still had this fear about losing my job or being penalized in some way. But in the moment before, I had let that go, or I at least started to cozy up to the idea of letting it go. So that's why I chose the word present. What was next? I am present. I am calm. I am present. I am loving and I'm kind. Okay. So the loving aspect was all about loving what I have, loving everyone there is. I always try to take acceptance to the next level of love, because I can accept that I might lose my job, but it's harder for me to think I love that I'm going to lose my job. No matter what happens, if I lose my job, I'm still going to be in love. I'm still going to have love for my life and love for my circumstances. So I challenge myself to take on that level of consciousness. And immediately I'm shown resistance. There's a part of me that's like, no, this is not going to be good. If you lose your job, you're going to be fucked. that kind of mentality is there. But then I remind myself that over the past 7 years, I've been able to overcome every instance of fear or pain that I've encountered by having this mentality. So I just have to continue practicing that. So that's why this affirmation for me was really helpful, because I force myself to say these things and then I'm shown exactly why I might not believe them in that instance. But every time I analyze those beliefs as to why I don't believe it, I realized that it's not based in reality. It's not based on fact. It's based on fear. It's based on the conditioned habit in me to look for a way out because I don't feel good. So that's why I challenge myself to be loving of everything. And then as soon as I do that, I see what's keeping me from feeling it, and then I understand it and I let it go, and I'm back in love. I'm back in love. Then after that, I said, I am kind. I don't think there was much to that one, just because I think I knew that my mind was going to rhyme something. Because, like I said, I like using the rhymes and affirmations, they stick better. I'm a very rhythmic person. I want to resolve these things, but it's essentially the same thing as loving. But I guess the kindness comes from something beyond, loving my own creation, loving my own reality, loving my own situation. It's more about being kind to others. So I didn't really need to say that one to myself, because I never have trouble being kind. It's true. Like I never get in a situation where I'm angry with someone and I end up being mean or something like that. When I'm with other people is when it brings out the best in me, really. Yeah. So after that, the next sentence was, I am protected at all times. Yeah. And this one, I see it to be probably the hardest one for people to accept, to be protected at all times, because it implies that there's some greater power protecting me. And there is and there isn't. Let's just put it that way. It's one of those paradoxical things. It's the dichotomy of reality. So let me see if I can explain what I mean. I'm protected by karma. So it's important that you understand what I mean by karma, because there's a lot of different ways to think about it, and the word has kind of been commandeered by, I don't know, society in a way that doesn't really reflect its true meaning. But its true meaning, when it comes down to it, is essentially momentum or inertia. So if you do bad in your life, on some level, you understand that is bad, because there's some sort of cognitive dissonance within you that has allowed you to do that bad. So that cognitive dissonance has vibrational consequence. It creates a frequency that permeates through your life. Just for an example, as I was just talking about how I had this conditioned habit to look for a way out when I wasn't feeling good, that was a habit I developed when I was really young. So it has inertia and momentum. And just because I realized it's not valid at one point in my life doesn't mean it's going to just completely disappear. There's a karmic response. Not a response, there's a karmic consequence because of it. My mind always has the capacity to go back to that, because my mind is just a collection of habits, a collection of patterns. So that pattern was so frequent throughout my first 25 years of life that it's really easy for me to fall back into that pattern. So that's what I mean by karma. If you do something really good, what you believe to be good, you're going to be filled with a feeling of joy or acceptance or love or pride or something that assures you that you are on the right path. So that's going to have a positive effect in the future as well. So that's what I mean by karma. So when I say I'm protected at all times, I mean that at my core, I know what is real. I know what is true. I know that I'm an eternal being and I'm always going to be okay. And I'm constantly on a spiritual evolution. and this is never ending, and I can always come back to love if I just make myself aware of it. So by knowing that, I realize that I've been practicing this for the past 7 years. So that residual karma, that leftover frequency, that pattern that's been repeated so many times now to come back to peace, come back to love, it has so much momentum and inertia and power that no matter what happens to me, I know I can always come back to love. So in that sense, I'm protected at all times by my understanding of what can be and what is, essentially. But then you can extend this to the idea that there are beings or one being protecting you or protecting me. I feel protected at all times. Like I said, from the momentum and the inertia of all that I know and all that I've done that I believe to be good for me and good for the all. So I know I'm taken care of. Even when bad things happen, they always turn out to be good in some way. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. I get fear and I get worry, but somehow it ends up serving me. Like it always ends up being in my favor. But then there's the idea of higher power, higher beings taking care of you, looking out for you. Now, what I mean by that is they are just as real as you and me, because in the grand scheme of things, everything is an illusion. You and I are illusions. We believe we are real. And in a sense, we are. We are both real and not real. And I completely appreciate the idea that that's contradictory. But as I've said many times before, everything true contradicts itself. It's just the way it is. You just start getting used to that idea. Get used to it now, because the more you get used to it, the more you'll understand it, and the better thing it'll be for you, me, and everyone else. Okay. You've probably heard people talk about spirit guides and light workers and even extraterrestrials that are orbiting the planet and making sure we don't blow this place up. Now, the idea of that first occurred to me when I used to watch Star Trek. Because when I got into Star Trek 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, that was one concept that really rang true to me. I was like, man, that's incredible, because it only makes sense that there will be other life forms out there. Now, before I used to think we were limited by the speed of light and that it would take other life forms millions of years to get here. So I thought, there's no one actually here. But I now know that we are not limited by anything, and that our consciousness can travel throughout the universe by just merely vibrating at a different frequency, because distance is only an illusion as well. All material is illusion. All reality is illusion. You can vibrate at a different frequency and suddenly you are there, so to speak, because the distance between you is not any more real than anything else. So we are not limited by that. So it only stands to reason that there would be other life forms that have visited here and that are still visiting here. And the reason why I understand that something could be looking out for me and protecting me is because I understand that these beings that are like me, in a sense, my intention now, knowing what I know, is to spread this knowledge, spread this truth, so other people can feel what I feel, and we can truly live a life of harmony and joy and love. And that's the whole point of all of this, is to evolve to the point that you understand what you are, so you can transcend what got you there. You can transcend the fear and transcend all the negativity or the ignorance or whatever that put you in the position that you were. Everything that we've done and experienced has gotten us to this point, so we can understand what we are, transcend it, and then feel nothing but love and joy for all that is. So that means that with my intention to spread this word around the earth, once that's done, even if it's not in my lifetime, it might be in my next lifetime, we are going to be in a position where we live on a harmonious earth, where we are higher evolved beings, and we don't have war, we don't have worry, we don't have fear. We simply live in joy and peace and togetherness and community. And it would only stand to reason then that we will be like, okay, what do we do now? Like, aside from feeling joy, like we're going to want something to do, you know? So there will be a bunch of us that will decide to go out further and help others evolve as well. So there are higher evolved beings out in the universe that had enough of their planet. You know, they were like, okay, we figured it all out here. Now they were aware that there was other people out there that were in a lower state of vibration, a lower state of consciousness that required some sort of care, some sort of parenting, some sort of observation, essentially. So it makes sense that these higher beings would travel to our planet and observe us to make sure we don't completely destroy ourselves. Because they want what we want. We all want to feel love and joy and togetherness, and they want that same thing for us. They want it because we want it. They are there to only basically grant what we truly desire. So yeah, there probably has been and still is a number of different extraterrestrial or spirit type beings that are with us, looking over us. And there might even be lower forms that have like basically hijacked the technology to travel to other planets and whatnot. And those might be the forms that have come here for their own doing because they haven't evolved to the point that they understand they're a part of the whole. So they're here to use us, here to manipulate us, get what they need the same way, you know, everybody else on this earth manipulates others to get what they need, whether it be money or food or, I don't know, pleasure. Either way, there's everyone on the spectrum. There are lower life forms that are not as evolved that are here to take advantage of us. And then there are higher life forms that are here to protect us, here to make sure that we do what's necessary to get us to the next level so we can be a higher evolved being or a higher evolved consciousness or a higher evolved community or species. So all those types of beings are a possibility to me, and I understand that. And even if they aren't orbiting the earth and watching us physically, I understand that there are beings on a higher vibration that are with me because technically they aren't any different from me. I am not separate from those beings. I, as an eternal being, as an infinite being, exists on every level, exists in every dimension in some way, shape, or form. So you think about the dimension of time. Beings that are a higher dimension than us, they are not limited by our sense of time. They can see our entire existence in a blink of an eye. What basically I'm trying to say is that the possibility of these beings is very real. And so I also feel protected by them. But at the same time, I want to make it clear that I don't feel as if I'm any separate from them. But there are people on this earth that haven't fully grasped the idea that they are the all. They still think they're a separate being, so they look to things such as spirit guides or extraterrestrials or light workers or whatever you want to call them, star seeds or something like that, to protect them. And if that's what is necessary within you to understand that level of protection, then that's what works for you now. But at some point in your spiritual evolution, you will get to the point that you understand that you are no different from those light workers or spirit guides, and you will ascend to that level as well. We all go through this wheel of ascension. We all play every role. Every single experiencer there is plays every role. You've already played every role and are simultaneously playing every role right now, because in the grand scheme of things, there is no time. Time is simply an illusion, as well as everything else. So that's how I feel as if I'm protected. I'm protected by myself, by what I've done and what I believe, but at the same time, I'm protected by other beings and other people in my life, because I have so much love. It's unreal. Like, it's not just the light beings and the light workers and the spirit guides that are protecting me. I feel protected by everyone in my life because I am loved by everyone in my life. It's unreal, the love I have. I wouldn't be able to begin expressing my appreciation for the love I have in my life. It's simply remarkable. So yeah, even if there isn't spirit guides, I feel as if nothing bad can happen to me, because even just my friends and my family will always be there for me. But I know there is anyways. So that's the idea behind the affirmation that I chose, or that occurred to me. Whatever way you want to look at it, is both and, like everything else. So using those types of things, understanding how they work, can help us overcome our fear in this situation, which is necessary right now more than ever. And it's exciting to me, honestly, because so much can come of this that can be great for us. We can like, the system that we live in is already be completely uprooted. So it only makes sense to just shut it down and start a brand new one where the main objective is to take care of everyone. Like, why not? Governments all around the world are already becoming socialist in the sense that they are providing for their people. People can't go to work, so governments are paying their rent. They're paying for their groceries. Now, we can do that on a grand scale. We can do it everywhere because there truly is no scarcity. There truly is no limitation. We can start right now creating this new community that is necessary for us to ascend to the next level. That's where we are. We're ready to go. I'm ready to go. Are you ready with me? Let's do it together. Let's demand of the people in power that they actually stop perpetuating this lie that there isn't enough to go around. There's more than enough. We can feed and clothe and shelter everyone on the earth 10 times over if we wanted. So let's get to it. Let's do it. Now, there's a million different ways we could go about that. I just wanted to put that idea out there. Maybe I'll speak a little bit more about it later. Just for one, we can feed each other better. We can feed everyone. I don't know if you ever heard this, but we already grow enough food and use enough land to feed upwards of 10 billion people. We already do that right now, but we're not feeding people, we're feeding animals so we can slaughter and kill them. So if we just reduced or completely cut out the amount of animals we slaughter and kill, we could use that land we're growing for feed to feed us. We could use that land to grow that food for all the people who are starving. And it just so happens that a lot of these places where they grow this food are in countries where people are starving the most. And that doesn't make much sense to me, but so that's one way. We can start to feed each other. We need to change our energy sources, clearly, because the energy sources we are using are destroying the planet. They are destroying our air. They're destroying our water. We don't have clean drinking water. And the only way we do is we sterilize it with chemicals that are harmful to our body. So if we actually took care of our water, we wouldn't need to add these chemicals. We can change the way we eat. We can change the way we drink. We can change the energy. We can change all the products that we create. Everything needs to change. But this is the time we do it. This is where we start. This is the beginning of the new world. Let's do it, people. I know. You can be scared in this time, and it makes sense that you would be, but you can also be excited. We are moving into the unknown, and the unknown is scary. I get that. I truly do. So by changing the way you think and by changing the way you feel, you can literally change the way this goes. We need a consciousness shift. Wake yourself up, and we will wake everyone up, and then we can all live in harmony together. So let's get to it, people. Peace, love is what it's all about. I love you all. I hope you're doing really well in this time. Let's work together. Let's come together. Let's share these ideas. Let's start talking about what needs to be done to take advantage of this opportunity to change everything. Namaste.